Netcat is a computer networking service for reading from and writing to network connections using TCP or UDP. Netcat is designed to be a dependable backend that can be used directly or easily driven by other programs and scripts. At the same time, it is a feature-rich network debugging and investigation tool, since it can produce almost any kind of correlation its user could need and has a number of built-in capabilities. Its list of features includes port scanning, transferring files, and port listening, and it can be used as a backdoor. Features: Netcat's features include outbound or inbound connections, TCP or UDP, to or from any ports, full DNS forward reverse checking, with appropriate warnings, ability to use any local source port, ability to use any locally configured network source address, built-in port scanning capabilities, with randomization, built-in loose source routing capability, can read command line arguments from standard input, slow send mode, one line every n seconds, hex dump of transmitted and received data, optional ability to let another program service establish connections, optional telnet options responder, featured tunneling mode which permits user-defined tunneling, for example, UDP or TCP, with the possibility of specifying all network parameters. Examples: opening a raw connection to port 25. ncmail.server.net 25. Setting up a one-shot web server on port 8080 to present the content of a file. Echo-ni http://1.0200 ok/r/n content length, $wcc, some file, /r/n/r/n. cat some file. ncl 8080. The file can then be accessed via a web browser under HTTP, server name 8080/. Netcat only serves the file once to the first client that connects and then exits. It also provides the content length for browsers that expect it, checking if UDP ports 80 to 90 are open on 192.168.0.1 using zero-mode I/O. NCVZU 192.168.0.180-90. Note that UDP tests will always show as open. The errors argument is useless. Test if UDP port is open, simple UDP server and client. This test is useful if you have shell access to the server that should be tested, but you do not know whether there is a firewall blocking a specific UDP port on the server. On the listening host, that is on the server whose port needs to be checked, do the following. NCL 7000. On the sending host, do the following. Note that Sovnum is the host name of the listening host. NCU Sovnum 7000. If text typed on the sending host is displayed also on the listening host, then the UDP port 7000 is open. If it is not open, you will get an error such as connection refused. There is a caveat. On some machines, IPv6 may be the default IP version to use by Netcat. Thus, the host specified by the hostname is contacted using IPv6, and the user might not know about this. Ports may appear closed in the test, even though they would be open when using IPv4. This can be difficult to notice and may cause the false impression that the port is blocked, while it is actually open. You can force the use of IPv4 by adding -4 to the options of the NC commands. Pipe via UDP with a wait time of 1 second to log a host on port 514. Echo 0, message NCW1 new log a host 514. Port scanning. An uncommon use of Netcat is port scanning. Netcat is not considered the best tool for this job, but it can be sufficient. NCVNZW1 192.168.1.21-1000. The N parameter here prevents DNS lookup, Z makes NC not receive any data from the server, and W1 makes the connection time out after 1 second of inactivity. Proxying. Another useful behavior is using Netcat as a proxy. Both ports and hosts can be redirected. Look at this example. NCL 12345 ncwww.google.com 80. Port 12345 represents the request, This starts a NC server on port 12345 and all the connections get redirected to google.com 80. If a web browser makes a request to NC, the request will be sent to Google but the response will not be sent to the web browser. That is because pipes are unidirectional. This can be worked around with a named pipe to redirect the input and output. MKFIFO backpipe, NCL 12345 backpipe NC www.google.com 81, backpipe. The C option may also be used with the NCAT implementation. NCATL 12345 CNC www.google.com 80 feet. Using a named pipe is a more reliable method because using C option provides only a one-shot proxy. Another useful feature is to proxy SSL connections. This way, the traffic cannot be viewed in wire sniffing applications such as a ResHark. This can be accomplished on Unixes by utilizing MKFIFO, Netcat, and OpenSL. MKFIFO TMP, MKFIFO TMP2, NCL 8080K, TMP TMP2 and, while, 1, do. OpenSL client connect www.google.com 443 quiet TMP TMP2, done. Making any processor server, Netcat can be used to make any processor network server. It can listen on a port and pipe the inputs it receives to that process. The E option spawns the executable with its input and output redirected via network socket. For example, it is possible to expose a Bourne shell process to remote computers. To do so, on a computer A with IP 192.168.1.2, run this command. Then, from any other computer on the same network, one could run this NC command. And the output one would see might be like this. In this way, the E option can be used to create a rudimentary backdoor. Some administrators perceive this as a risk, and thus do not allow Netcat on a computer. Port forwarding or port mapping, on Linux, Netcat can be used for port forwarding. Below are 9 different ways to do port forwarding in Netcat. NCLP port 1 CNCLP port 2, NCLP port 1 CNC host 2 port 2, NCLP port 1 CNCULP port 2, NCLP port 1 CNCU host 2 port 2, NC host 1 port 1 CNC host 2 port 2, NC host 1 port 1 CNCULP port 2, NC host 1 port 1 CNCU host 2 port 2, NCULP port 1 CNCULP port 2, NCULP port 1. CNCU host 2 port 2. Example, C proxying Netcat proxying, ports and re-implementations. The original version of Netcat was a Unix program. The last version was released in March 1996. There are several implementations on POSIX systems, including rewrites from scratch like GNU Netcat or OpenBSD Netcat, the latter of which supports IPv6. The OpenBSD version has been ported to the FreeBSD base and Windows Cygwin as well. Mac OS X users can use Mac ports to install a Netcat variant. There is also a Microsoft Windows version of Netcat available. Known ports for embedded systems includes versions for the Windows CE or for the iPhone. BusyBox includes by default a lightweight version of Netcat. Solaris 11 includes Netcat implementation based on OpenBSD Netcat. Socket is a more complex variant of Netcat. It is larger and more flexible and has more options that must be configured for a given task. CryptCat is a version of Netcat with integrated transport encryption capabilities. In the middle of 2005, NMAP announced another Netcat incarnation called NCAT. It features new possibilities such as connection brokering, TCP/UDP redirection, SOCKS for client and server support, ability to chain NCAT processes, HTTP connect proxying, SSL connect listen support and IP address connection filtering. Like NMAP, NCAT is cross-platform. On some systems, modified versions or similar Netcat utilities go by the command name, NC, NCAT, Netcat, Socket, SOC, socket, SBD. See also: List of Unix programs, MAP, OpenSSL, Telnet, Plink, references. External links, official website, NC, 1, AA Euro Linux User Commands Manual.